Good evening, everybody. The still powerful Hurricane Maria, northwestward bound tonight, starting to lash the Turks and Caicos after thrashing parts of the Dominican Republic and devastating Puerto Rico. As of right now, Maria is a Category 3 hurricane, sustained winds of 120 miles an hour. Forecasters expect the storm to track east of the central Bahamas and stay well offshore of Florida and the southeastern United States. In Puerto Rico, residents there emerging from their homes today, seeing the devastation from the biggest and most destructive hurricane to hit the island in a century. Smashed buildings, balconies torn from the buildings, uprooted trees, floodwaters turning streets into rivers. President Trump has already approved a disaster declaration, saying that he'll be flying soon to Puerto Rico to assess the damage and meet with local government officials and the victims of Hurricane Maria. Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan is in San Juan and has our report.
Well, they certainly do need help in many different areas, and they need immediate help. This is the flooding around some apartment complexes just outside of San Juan. None of these people have any electricity. No one on the entire island has any electricity. They've been sitting up in those apartments, some with damage from the wind, some with black water inside on the floors. They often hand stuff up or down to get what they need. As far as the situation here is on the ground, help is on the way. There is Coast Guard ships bringing in millions of liters of water. The airport isn't open yet, but it should be open for aid tomorrow. The biggest problem here across the island is the power grid. It's been weak for decades. It was hurt by Hurricane Irma 2 weeks ago, and now it was really demolished by this most recent storm, Hurricane Maria. Right now, it's really been a do-it-yourself operation as I try and get out of the way of this police cruiser. They make quite a wake when they come down the street here. It's been a do-it-yourself operation. We've seen people trying to pull up power lines by themselves using just hammers and nails, a lot of machetes. If you look over to Chris Pines' right there's some people who've just been cooking out this morning. They have no power and very little resources, so those women just chopped up with either machetes or hammers some plywood and use those satellite dishes as windscreens, and they've been making their barbecue throughout the day. They're going to get a good hot meal at the end of it. So when you're out of electricity, it's hard to get water. There's gasoline in short supply. You're in the dark. It's not easy to keep in good spirits, but I've got to say that people so far have been extremely resilient. There's been a couple of incidents reported of looting. Some of the grocery stores in this area where I am now, their shelves were empty during the storm. But on the whole, you know, when you have no lights on at night and a lot of people in tough situations, we have not seen outbreaks of violence. Of course, the real test is going to be getting aid to the people who need it and getting it to them quickly. In San Juan, Puerto Rico, Steve Harrigan, Fox News.
Steve Harrigan, thank you very much from San Juan. Rescuers in Mexico are racing to find survivors 48 hours after a massive 7.1 magnitude quake hit the country's central region. More than 50 survivors have been pulled from disaster sites, but the chance of survival diminishing, of course, with each passing hour. And the death toll is still rising, now at 237, 137 people killed in the capital city. Fox News chief correspondent Jonathan Hunt is in Mexico City with our report.
Lou, the search for survivors becomes more desperate by the minute, nowhere more so than here at the school that collapsed when the earthquake hit. We just returned from a close-up look at the site of the search and rescue operation. Take a look. This is the heart of what is obviously a very tense and very difficult search and rescue operation. The rescue workers inching their way across the rubble, the remains of what was the school. They are looking for any signs of life. In the past 24 hours, they have seen some signs of life through heat-seeking cameras. They are not saying whether they believe those survivors are adults or children. They are still simply looking for anybody who may have survived what is obviously a devastating crush of rubble here. They say they will not give up until they can be absolutely certain that there are no more survivors. Similar search and rescue operations are underway across this city. There have been some miracles. Earlier today, 2 women and 1 man were pulled from the rubble of what was once an office building in downtown Mexico City. Loved ones of those who are still missing wait and hope. But as I say, Lou, with every passing minute, those hopes dim. Lou?
Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Hunt from Mexico City. More vindication for President Trump, who said he was wiretapped back in March. The former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, now admits President Obama could have been picked up, as he put it. Excuse me, President Trump could have been picked up during the government surveillance of Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort.
Is it possible the president was picked up in a conversation with Paul Manafort?
It's certainly conceivable. Yeah,
is it likely?
I can't say. I wouldn't want to go there, but I will say it's possible.
Well, the problem is, of course, James Clapper, who has lied on numerous occasions, both to Congress, the American people, said back in March that he categorically denied any wiretap had been undertaken against the Trump campaign.
There was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign.
We're pleased to be joined tonight by the counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, great to have you with us. And the president taking steps toward reining in North Korea, his executive order, sanctions. At the same time, the diplomacy that Mr. Trump has led with Xi Jinping paying off with the announcement by the central bank that they would constrain doing business with the North Koreans. Quite a day.
It's quite a day, Lou, and let's not lose sight of the fact that President Trump issued his executive order against North Korea right there at the United Nations General Assembly meeting. And I think this is incredibly important in what's been a consequential week for our president, really taking aim at our nation's sovereignty, saying America first will always be his guiding principle, and that he actually recommends other countries do the same. And when it comes to North Korea today, the president putting even more teeth into what has become twice a 15-0 UN Security Council vote to sanction North Korea. The president saying, taking aim, speaking their language, knowing where it would hurt, and their shipping, their trade practices, basically giving people a choice. You deal with North Korea or you deal with the U.S., but you can't do both. And these economic sanctions are severe. Military options still on the table, but really deepening the economic sanctions. And I think China blinked today. I think it's a relationship that the president has established with China that is forcing China to act according to the will of this president.
Let me turn to the unmasking scandal and why there is not a Justice Department investigation underway right now into Susan Rice, Samantha Power, the UN ambassador, the national security advisor under President Obama. Why isn't there an investigation?
Well, perhaps there will be, because I just think that the explosive revelations, even in today's news, Lou, that Samantha Power was basically requesting 1 unmasking per day for most of 2016. It's just a remarkable number.
It's unheard of.
And, you know, it grew at a clip, I'm sure, for all of them after Donald Trump unexpectedly beat Hillary Clinton. That you know what happened during those transitional months when everybody was rushing around Washington to sprinkle intelligence around. And so, you know, and they lied. These people lied. They can't get their story straight.
Yeah,
they all attack
President
Trump.
For crying out loud, the director of national intelligence, James Clapper, not only couldn't get his story straight, he's lied and lied and lied, and today acknowledges, well, maybe he was lying when he said, well, anything is possible. I mean, this has reached a level where the entire administration of Barack Obama is suspect.
Well, and Lou, then let's keep the investigations going. Remember, it's Team Obama and it's the mainstream media, their friends there, who by and large have been criticizing this president's claim of surveillance and this president's claims that this president questioning openly about the unmasking of innocent Americans. And they've been pushing back from day one of the president doing that. That's 6.5 months ago when he first said it. But now,
you call it pushing back. I call it subversion outright. What they have been carrying.
Let's continue these investigations, Lou, and let's start
and let's
targeting
investigate
the right
stuff and the right people. Let me ask you quickly: the president going to Alabama. It's an unprecedented step for a sitting president to intervene in a primary election. What are the risks for him politically?
Well, the president is 5 for 5 in special elections so far since he got here. And the difference in all of those races that were very geographically disparate, very demographically different, is that the president and the vice president got involved, put the manpower on the ground. There's nothing quite like the hum of Air Force One coming to a state near you and giving the presidential imprimatur. It's not just that he's intervening in a primary.
Well, remember, there's one other difference.
There's a sitting U.S. senator. He's a sitting U.S. senator who's been supportive of this president's agenda in his 6 months on the job here.
You're talking about Luther Strange.
That's right.
He's also been unsupportive of the president preceding that. So it's an interesting decision. No angst, no uncertainty about whether or not putting the president's prestige on the line is a question for the White House.
Well, the president's also a loyal person. He endorsed Luther Strange in early to mid-August, and he's following through on that. And again, we've got important things here, like repealing and replacing Obamacare.
Will Mitch McConnell reciprocate, Kellyanne, that loyalty and that fondness?
I have no idea. I certainly hope so, because he's the Republican leader. I think he will, insofar as he's behind Graham Cassidy. He's helping with tax reform. Look, the president is willing.
Peace.
Look, the president. This is the president's agenda.
I know.
But wait, but I want to make something very clear.
I know.
Donald Trump's ideas prevailed, and the left's ideas failed a year ago. This is Donald Trump's program, and people should get with the program or get out of the way.
Por favor. We thank you so much. We always appreciate talking with you. We wish we had more time so that we could continue the fun. Kellyanne, thanks so much.
There's always next time. Thank you.
You got it. Look forward to it. Kellyanne Conway, we're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. President Trump signing a new executive order targeting North Korea.
It is unacceptable that others financially support this criminal rogue regime.
We take up the president's efforts to rein in the rogue regime. Ambassador John Bolton, our guest next. In America's had enough of Congress and its failing leadership. Wait till you see the polls on the so-called leadership of the Republican Party. We take up those numbers and much more straight ahead. We'll be right back. Stay with us. President Trump putting more pressure on Kim Jong-un. A new executive order lets the Treasury Department target individuals or entities that do business with North Korea. President Trump today also praised China and Xi Jinping for ordering their banks to cut off North Korea. And the president of Afghanistan praising President Donald Trump for his Afghan strategy. Ashraf Ghani met with the president in New York City, lauded the new policy that eliminates arbitrary deadlines and calls for more U.S. troops in Afghanistan.
It's a difference of day and night. The cloud of uncertainty has been lifted, but equally important is your commitment to a political solution at the end of this process.
And now to take up Afghanistan, North Korea, and the success of Trump diplomacy, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Fox News contributor John Bolton. John, great to have you.
Glad to be here.
It is remarkable to see Xi Jinping, as a result of diplomacy, personal diplomacy on the part of the president and the Afghan president, praising the United States. I mean, when in the world did we think we would ever hear it? Certainly not during 8 years of the Obama administration. And now Xi Jinping is acting like a true strategic partner.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a mark of the success that the president's had, despite all the criticism he's gotten. This week has been a triumph for him. I thought his speech on Tuesday to the UN General Assembly was top of the line. And what China has apparently done, although we need to see their performance,
Yes,
in the past they've had the rhetoric but not the performance. I think Xi Jinping appreciates that Barack Obama is no longer president and Donald Trump is a very serious person. So when he says, as he did on Tuesday, the only acceptable outcome in North Korea is no nuclear weapons capability, that this president means it, and the one before him didn't.
And the one before that, and the one before that.
Right. Look,
all the way back to Clinton.
25 years of failure.
And as we look at what is happening domestically in our domestic politics here, Susan Rice, the former national security advisor, lying again, talking about the unmasking of Trump administration officials, Trump transition officials as well. The president, it's clear, possibly himself, targeted as well. And now we learn Samantha Power, who has your old job at the United Nations, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, we're talking 260 plus unmaskings of American citizens. This is outrageous, and I don't hear a single Republican leader calling for an immediate investigation of the Obama administration's national security apparatus. It is appalling.
Yeah. Well, this is really something for the Director of National Intelligence to look into. You know, I have a little personal experience with this unmasking, deminimization thing. When I was undersecretary in the first 4 years of the Bush administration dealing with nonproliferation and arms control, I asked, now brace yourself, I asked for maybe 10 or 12 names to be unmasked because they had some connection with proliferation. I wanted to see more about it. The Democrats made a huge issue of this in my confirmation battle to be UN ambassador. 10 or 12 names. We're talking maybe in Samantha Power's case, it's actually total about 350. So, you know, if she can demonstrate a national security reason, well, then she's entitled to have the names. But I want to know what the rationale is. And
I want to know who was unmasked.
Yeah. Well, in my case, I said to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, you can have the intercepts, you can make them public, you can see the names, you can see all that. I had nothing to hide. If she's got nothing to hide, let's see what the Senate has to say about it.
It would be nice to hear from the Senate Intelligence Committee, who is led, I think, by one of the most incompetent chairs I've ever seen in Senator Burr, because he is utterly dependent on Mark Warner, from the loyal opposition. I mean, it's just as if they've thrown the keys to government over to the Democratic Party or the intelligence services. I mean, we've got a special counsel now, John, who is running the government and has the capacity to run this government without intervention or any break or constraint whatsoever, because it's clear, it is absolutely clear, he doesn't care what he does next, so long as he continues with this nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually a fan of Senator Burr's, so I hope he can get this on track, because I honestly think the American people are going to lose confidence in our intelligence agencies if they think that protection...
Who would have confidence in our intelligence agencies?
Well, they have...
No, but I mean, seriously, you surely are not telling me.
They have enormous technical capabilities and...
Well, they've demonstrated. Look at all of the unmaskings and all of the demonstrated technological prowess they have. Meanwhile, they've been used by the previous administration as a political
This is a risk. No, you're absolutely right. This risks the opponents of surveillance at all using what Obama did to politicize intelligence to restrict our intelligence gathering capabilities. So it's a serious threat here that I think Republicans who believe in a strong national security policy have to step up to. There's no reason to protect the prior administration if these allegations prove out.
We're talking about the upper echelon of the leadership of these agencies and what they had to agree to. We're talking about the FISA court, John. Why am I going to put up with a FISA court that is a rubber stamp? Why are we going to permit this kind of conduct without consequence? This is madness.
Well, I think the FISA court should be advised of what they found out. My experience with the FISA court is that it's a pretty tough operation. But to me, it's calling into question the public's confidence in our ability to conduct government that pursues national security objectives without politicization. And I think I lay that squarely at the doorstep of Barack Obama.
Oh, I do too. And obviously, the heads of the intelligence agencies during his administration, the heads of his national security team, And who knows? And by the way, look at the FBI. Are you kidding me? That's the way to conduct? What about the head of his CIA, who spied on the very intelligence committee that has oversight over the CIA and the other intelligence agents?
I don't think there's more politicization of intelligence in any administration.
This isn't politicization. This is criminal conduct.
And rank incompetence while we're on the subject.
Yeah, no question about it. And yet people are saying, really? They unmasked someone? The head of the damn CIA is surveilling the intelligence committee? Quite a bunch.
To be sure.
I think we need to talk more about what we can grant these intelligence agencies, John, but that's a conversation for another time. Ambassador John Bolton, great to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Thanks so much. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you believe it will take a special counsel to reveal the true depth of corruption among Obama's intelligence leaders? We want to hear from you on this. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight, please. And on Wall Street today, stocks closed lower, but near those record highs. The Dow down 58 points, the S&P lost 8, the Nasdaq down 33. Volume on the big board slipping to 2.9 billion shares. Stocks dragged lower, at least the index is dragged lower, by Apple. Shares of the tech giant have fallen more than 4.5% since last week's product announcement. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Wall Street's top regulator under fire after admitting that cyber attacks broke through successfully the firewalls of the federal government and took files from a database and perhaps used all of that data for insider trading. The cyber crisis this nation faces, the subject of my commentary here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tomorrow, Trump is up. The president rises in the polls after working across the aisles. Could his UN speech take the numbers even higher? Katrina Pearson goes behind the ratings on a must-see Varney, following a can't-miss interview with Ray Dalio on Mornings with Maria.
We've learned that not only 143 million people were compromised by Equifax as a result of a cyber attack in March, but now we learn that one of the agencies regulating the company and all other corporations in this country has also been hacked. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, saying its corporate filing system was attacked, and those hackers may have made illegal trades on that information. No. And despite detecting the breach last year, the SEC is only now telling us about it. It's a pattern, isn't it? The number of cyber attacks reported by the federal government has risen somewhat by more than 1,300% over a 10-year period. That's a significant increase even by government standards. And cyber attacks fell last year, but only because of a change, are you ready, in federal reporting requirements. And these are just the hacks that have been reported. Now, I'm talking about the cyber attacks as hacks, not the bureaucrats who make it possible for the hackers to breach all of that data. The most notable cyber attack being that of the Office of Personnel Management. That affected nearly 30 million federal employees. GAO, the Government Accountability Office, says it has made more than 2,500 security recommendations. By golly, nothing like a recommendation to improve cybersecurity. But as of February, about 1,000 of those improvements hadn't been implemented, so that slows down the course of history. Of course, this is just our federal government. The private sector, potentially even worse at guarding against cyber attacks. Just ask the geniuses at Equifax or Yahoo. I believe we're witnessing a cyber crisis, nothing less as a nation. And it is only getting worse. And it is getting worse while big business and big government fail to respond. The quotation of the evening, this from Will Rogers, who said, "Be thankful we're not getting all the government we're paying for." We're coming right back. The Trump administration tells Republican leaders to repeal and replace the imploding Obamacare disaster.
Almost anything would be better than Obamacare. Obamacare is imploding. It's collapsing all across the country.
Can the GOP leadership deliver before the looming deadline? We take that up with the Dean, Ed Rollins. And this fisherman battling a relentless adversary at sea. We show you the incredible heart-stopping video coming up here next. We'll be right back with that and much, much more. Facebook saying it struck a deal with congressional investigators to turn over ads bought by Russian entities in an effort to sway last year's election. Russian operatives apparently spent about $100,000 to buy more than 3,000 ads on Facebook. Facebook claiming it's cooperating. A source tells Fox that there is not an agreement yet with Congress on how much material Facebook may or may not provide. Well, joining me now, Ed Rollins. He served in 3 presidential administrations, a chief political advisor to the House Republican leadership, the Dean himself. Good to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
Well, I want to start, if I may. Last night, Ed and I were talking about the chief of staff of the White House, General John Kelly, and a picture that appeared in lots of places. And I took some exception to it. This is one of those pictures, and we can take that down because that's part of my my reporting tonight. I'm going to report to you, as you know, that I make a point of being sure that we tell the truth on this broadcast plainly and straightforwardly. I also make a point of correcting my mistakes when I make them. And I made one last night because I did not give the general credit for what he has achieved. I did not, in fact, treat the general fairly when it comes to that image. I still don't like the image, but nonetheless, I should not have questioned his commitment to the president. I had the opportunity to talk with General Kelly today, and he made it clear that he had helped the president in rehearsing the speech, that he was fully supportive of the president, that he had helped write parts of the speech, and that he has this president's back in every way. I will not divulge anything beyond the conversation to say I felt very badly that I had treated the general so badly, and I was wrong. It is also, I have to tell you, it leaves me almost effusive and exhilarated to know that the general, who has been his chief of staff for 6 weeks, is doing so much for a president that he not only respects and is fully committed to, but is serving with the honor and the effort that one would expect of a former 4-star Marine general. With that, Ed Rollins and I went to the subject of his loyalty to the president, even partisan-wise.
I apologize profusely to the general. Many times in this show, we've complimented him, and I think the world of him. Someone had told me that he had not voted for he voted for Mrs. Clinton. I repeated that last night. I make mistakes sometimes in my opinions. Those are my opinions. I try never to make mistakes on facts. Totally wrong. He was totally supportive of this president. And I think he's done a superb job. And I think the bottom line, I've been in a couple of White Houses. There's no tougher job in government than the chief of staff. He came in without his staff, with a different staff. He's turned this White House around. And just to show you what an extraordinary man he is not only given this service to this country over the years. He's one of 4-star generals in the history of the Marine Corps, which is 241 years. There's been 51 men who've ever held that rank. He's a hero. He's an American hero. And I think I owe him a profusely apology, and I wish him well, and I wish he's going to do well for this country and this president. And I thank him.
And I wish I hadn't made the mistake for which I do apologize, obviously, to the general. Thanks so much. Ed, let's turn to where we're headed. And that is, this is a president whose diplomacy is working, whether it's with China, whether it's with Afghanistan, and their leaders are responding, just as the so-called foreign policy establishment that this president has eschewed was criticizing him for following futile efforts.
We're the largest, most powerful nation in the world, economically, militarily, what have you. We've had weak presidents in the near past, the last 8 years. This president has stepped on the world stage, said what he's going to do, given great clarity to the Trump doctrine, And we have a couple of bad guys in the world. And obviously the leader of North Korea is a bad guy. He's firing off missiles, threatening us, threatening his neighbors. And the president has said, that's not tolerable. You continue this path, you're going to pay a very heavy price.
What do you make of the idiots on the left, in particular in the national left-wing nut media, criticizing the president for calling him Rocket Man, which I think, by the way, was one of the best lines of what I thought was the best speech by any president in my lifetime at the United Nations?
Well, the president has a great ability to put titles on things, and I think to a certain extent, again, this guy can't be dismissed. When you fire rockets, promising you're going to put nuclear weapons on those rockets and fire them towards us.
But do you really have to explain this to the left? I mean, are they such idiots?
No,
are they so committed blindly to an ideology that has failed that they would continue? I mean,
well, I think the mere fact that they applauded 8 years of the lead from behind policies of the past president.
Don't forget strategic patience. That's one of my favorites.
Well, we've had a long patience with Korea. We have basically bribed them. We've tried to get rid of their nuclear program before, and we haven't stopped them. We'll see whether peace through strength, which was the Reagan philosophy, is going to work, and I think it will.
Yeah, I think that's very simple. This president has put it straightforwardly. He means America first.
Right.
And devil take the hindmost.
Do you dare challenge him? That's the key thing here.
Do you dare challenge
who? Do you dare challenge the president? The president basically has made it very clear. Here's the line in the sand.
You're asking, should Kim Jong-un challenge
yes,
it?
Yes, he should not.
Well, then we'll find out the degree of his death wish.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Please roll the video now. 2 isn't enough to wrangle in this blue marlin. Where's that blue marlin? Oh, it's still in the ocean. There it is. There it is. The blue marlin was attacking the people who were meaning it no good themselves. The man trying to catch it, well, it didn't work out. The marlin won the battle, and that was a glimpse of it. Good going, Marlin. Up next, growing problems for Senate Majority Leader McConnell. Speaker Ryan as voters turn against them. Good grief, you cannot believe it. Look at these two fine Americans, these leaders of immense courage and capacity. Mark Stein will join me to look at the latest approval ratings for these two fine folks. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, joining me now to discuss Congress's new pitiful approval ratings, the latest, I should say, ever lower approval ratings. They've been pitiful for a long time. The latest push to repeal and replace Obamacare. Conservative political commentator, television star, best-selling author, and the list goes on. Good to have you with us, Mark Stein.
Great to be with you, Lou.
Let's turn to these polls. McConnell and Ryan. Are you surprised that they've hit 11%?
No, I'm actually surprised it's that high. I mean, basically, they're polling somewhere between Robert Mugabe and the Ebola virus. I mean, that's where they're down to now. And the interesting thing is that they've blown the last 8 months. McConnell, when he did his condescending thing at the Elks Lodge or wherever it was. The Legion Hall, when he said, well, basically, you know, this fellow, he's a bit inexperienced, and when he came to town, he didn't really know how to. Okay, well, what's your excuse? You guys are supposed to be the master cunning parliamentarian strategists, and you've blown the last 8 months.
Blown the last 8 months, and as the president says, they have carried out a charade over the last 7 years as the House tried in one form or the other. Well, they didn't try. They repealed Obamacare or some part of it 60 some odd times.
Right.
And then they get to a real opportunity to vote and they freeze.
Yeah.
They're absolutely frozen at the possibility that they would do something for which there might be a political consequence.
Yeah, suddenly their bluff was called. I think it's deeply unattractive. There was another thing McConnell said that I think bears going over too, and he said, well, we've got a lot on our plate between now and Christmas. because we've got to raise the debt ceiling and we've also got to figure out a way to fund the government.
Yes.
That's like me saying, oh, I've got a lot to do between now and Christmas. I've got to make my November mortgage payment and I've got to figure out a way to transfer $50 from my savings account to my checking account. This is housekeeping. It's not even legislating, it's just housekeeping. And they can't, there is a dysfunction in the institutions, and the Republican Party is going to pay the price for that if these guys don't get on board.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I wouldn't be surprised if McConnell and Ryan, one or both, are not removed by the conference from their positions. I can't even imagine how they move forward, because they are so clearly sold out. To the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable. They're not representing anyone other than those entities.
No, and you know, when people talk about Trump doing the deal with the Democrats, you know, Trump has a base.
Great bipartisanship.
The Democrats have a base. McConnell and Ryan do not have a base other than the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And I think there's no doubt that there was resistance to his bedrock issue, which is immigration and the wall.
Right.
And they figured, you know, all we have to do, we'll put him in the White House, but we can neuter him, and we can turn him into basically Jeb Bush with a slightly more butch attitude. And that's what they actually thought they were going to do. And Trump understands the danger if he goes down that path.
Well, he also has to be pleased with the latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, which has the president at 43%, which is just about 4 times better than Ryan and McConnell.
That's right.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, always good to see you.
Good to see you. Come back soon. Up next, the Afghan president praising President Trump. Why isn't the left-wing national media covering it? Well, I think we have a hint or two, but we'll fix that in just a moment. A quick programming note. I joined Sean Hannity tonight. We're talking about the Trump doctrine success. First success is everybody knows what the Trump doctrine is. 8 years and no one could figure out what the Obama doctrine was. We're coming right back. Stay with us. In our online poll last night, we asked you, do you believe Special Counsel Mueller has now egregiously exceeded the original mandate for his investigation? Almost 90% of you, 88%, say yes, he has. Joining us tonight, the Blaze TV and radio host, Lawrence Jones. Great to have you with us. Washington Times columnist, Fox News contributor, Tammy Bruce. Great to have you with us. And let's start with Mueller.
Yeah.
And then Samantha Power and Susan Rice. Why in the world is the Republican Party and the leadership in the House and the Senate putting up with the egregious acts of all of these people, not investigating them, but rather, for the past year and a half, a president without one iota of evidence of collusion with the Russians?
Well, it's interesting because all those people also had effectively, well, with Mueller and even running the FBI, but with Power and Susan Rice, 8 years of working effectively with the GOP. With everything Obama was doing, nary a pushback or a complaint. We knew that something strange was going on. As Samantha Power, when we talk about Nikki Haley, the difference is extraordinary when it comes to literal power, the nature of having an impact.
Shouldn't the focus change in Washington, D.C. right now to Samantha Power?
Oh, obviously.
Susan Rice, President Obama.
Oh, obviously. People have to use the comparison. If Richard Nixon was wiretapping McGovern, right? People have to get a perspective. Problem is the media is also ignoring it. But this is what the swamp, what the uniparty wants in Washington, which is business as usual.
Yeah. Lawrence?
Well, the Republican Party doesn't have the will to fight. The difference from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party is that they have a deep-rooted conviction. And when they see wrongdoing or there appear of wrongdoing from their political ideology, they fight. For example, the special counsel.
The Democrats.
Kept pushing. Yeah, the Democrats. They kept pushing until they got it. Whereas with the Republicans, they're just willing to let things go. For example, with Hillary Clinton and her emails, they could have continued and pressed until we got some sort of conviction, but they don't have that backbone. And so what we're going to see right now with the Samantha Powers incident, as well as Susan Rice, is that I don't want people to hold their breath because the Republicans really aren't going to do anything. They're going to let it go unless President Trump and his administration and the DOJ get involved.
Well, the president right now, his approval ratings, as we said, just in the latest NBC News, Wall Street Journal poll, up to 43%. His numbers are moving in precisely the direction which, by the way, this president has believed from the very beginning that those numbers would rise as he has achieved almost miracle results in the stock market and the economy, job creation, and his foreign policy.
It'll go up more.
And
yeah, it's going to go up more. It's going to go up more, Lou, after there's more polling after this UN speech. I mean, honestly, Lou, I'm not afraid right now as a country with all this national, scares with what North Korea would do, because it seems like we have a commander-in-chief now that is not afraid to lead and let the world know that he's not afraid to lead. And so I think the polls are going to go up after this speech.
We need to see, though, that resolve that we've seen on the international scene here at home. The same leadership's required to deal with Samantha Power, to deal still with Benghazi even, the nature of the emails, the collusion.
He has better foreign partners as heads of state in foreign policy than he does in his own party with the leadership of the GOP on Capitol Hill.
Part of that could...
That is the main obstacle.
It is, and it could be because he takes no prisoners on the foreign scene.
Well,
he needs to take no prisoners here, too, and he'll have more cooperation.
Yeah,
go ahead.
But those people are going to need the president when it comes to re-election in the midterm, so I hope they remember that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do know and to what they are willing to do. The Alabama Senate race, real quickly, we got about 30 seconds. What do you think? A good move for the president?
I think that he's chosen the wrong horse in this case. I think Judge Moore will do well with Sarah Palin going, Seb Gorka going, and where the base is headed.
Why don't you get the last word on this one real quick?
I totally agree with Tammy. He chose the wrong person, and now I think he's going to lose some political capital when it comes to needing that vote in the Senate. So I just hope the president knows what he was doing.
Well, I'm going to reserve his. I don't often do this. No forecast, no prediction, no judgment, no opinion. He's shown us all along. He does know what he's doing.
Man.
Lawrence Jones, Tammy Bruce, thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. Good night from New York.